Hello, everybody. It's Max with Crypto Talk Now. I want to give a shout out once again to the great Quant Papa. He posted about roughly 2 hours ago in regards to a particular interview with the one, the only Gilbert Verdian of Quant on Crypto World, which is a particular show that airs on Cnbc. Yeah, how cool is that? Quant going mainstream? Well, let's face it, guys. You do see Brad Garlinghouse or Ripple in plenty of interviews, right? So how cool is it to see GV in this upcoming video here in a moment in regards to not just really Quant, but his statements in regards to unregulated stablecoins. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into that. And then after that, I'm going to give you an outline in regards to the beginning, middle, and where we're at now in regards to just that stablecoin regulation. So let's go ahead and get right into it.
And Gilbert Verdian of Quant discusses what's next for crypto banking. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Jordan Smith. I spoke to Gilbert Verdian, the CEO of Quant, about what the closure of the CEN network and Signet means for cryptocurrencies and when a new banking partner might come along.
So I think when a lot of people are talking about Signature and Silvergate and its involvement with crypto, they're worried about how it will limit crypto's interaction with traditional banking going forward. But can you talk about how enmeshed crypto is with traditional finance as it stands right now, even before the collapse of Silvergate and Signature?
I think crypto as a technology has been around since 2008. I know my time in the government at the Treasury at the time, we were very early to look at it. So regulators have had many years to assess crypto, and banks like SVB and Silvergate and others, kind of innovators in this space, they took on a crypto challenge to understand what it can do and then offer that back as a service to consumers, businesses, and institutions. So, from what has happened, and I think it's kind of an evolution of maturity within the financial system. The early innovators are doing their thing and they've tried it out. And unfortunately, this hasn't really worked in everyone's favor. And what we're seeing in the markets this week is kind of a fear. And one of our board members, Guy Dietrich, says fear happens very fast and it spreads very fast. So we're seeing that happen very quickly within the markets, but it's not going away. What we can actually learn from the experiment of decentralization, the experiment of crypto, is how to do it by regulated institutions and how to offer it as a new form of an instrument or a new form of a tokenized security, and that's where we're heading.
Yeah, you mentioned the fear, and obviously we're seeing it with regional banks, but particularly with crypto. How big of a risk is a crypto contagion event? How big of a risk is that spilling into traditional markets? And has that been tamed now that the government's stepped in and backstopped some of these deposits?
If you look at contagion and resilience and systemic risk, this is a small drop in the ocean, what's happening this week. The actual value of what's happening is only 300 billion, and the US banking system is $23 trillion worth. So it's not a real contagion to the same effect as we had during the real financial crisis, the GFC in 2008. So the contagion has been quite successful because government overnight has stepped in. We saw the same thing happen in the UK with HSBC agreeing to buy SVB Bank. And that's been a very strong move for the markets, and it's rallying and reacting to that. But if you think about contagion, we're not risking the system as a whole. But if you look at crypto as an asset class, less than 10 years ago, in 2013, it was only 10 billion worth. Today, it's over $1 trillion. So the actual market of that new type of asset has become too big to not do anything about and too big to not regulate. So we're seeing regulators understand what can happen to a market and to the rest of the system, and they're starting to regulate appropriately, moving forward.
Speaking about regulation, I'm wondering if you could give sort of a reality check as to, there's been a lot of concern around whether the shutdown of CEN and Signet will really limit cryptocurrency companies and their ability to transact with US dollars. Do you see a competitor coming along? Do you see any headwinds when it comes to regulation and another bank stepping up? What does the landscape look like now that we've lost these two forms of technology?
I think what we'll firstly see is, and what the market needs, is clear guidance from regulators on what is allowed, what is appropriate, and what is expected. That will be coming in, and we've seen introductions of new bills in Europe that are facilitating that, and we're seeing MICA and the Financial Markets Bill in the UK. What we're going to see next is the actual implementation of new types of assets, new types of instruments that use crypto technology like blockchain, tokenization, fractionalization, to deliver better products and services back to consumers, businesses, and institutions. So we've already seen the beginning of that, and a lot of the global banks have been experimenting with this. JP Morgan, Citi with the regulated liability network, and others are bringing and introducing new forms of instrument classes and assets to the market, and it's using the technology available from blockchain and learning from what's happened within DeFi systems and DeFi networks to have a regulated entity deliver that product and that service to the wider market.
Yeah, and regulation will take some time. So I'm curious, if people don't want to wait for that regulatory clarity, it seems like stablecoins are the next option there. What's the outlook for stablecoin regulation or the use of stablecoins instead of banking, given all the drama with USDC and some of the other stablecoins this past weekend?
We don't believe there's much hope for unregulated stablecoins moving forward. What we're seeing is that transition of a new form of money, and traditional money has been very binary. It's a buy or a sell, it's a push or a pull. And what we're seeing is, using the technology available today, is tokenized money in new forms and in new formats, such as a central bank digital currency, or even tokenized deposits, tokenized liabilities, and these are issued by commercial banks. So we're going to see a new form of digital money that is programmable. It's able to roam, so your bank account can be used anywhere in the world, similar to the way cards work today, and similar to the way your mobile phone can be used anywhere in the world. And that's going to be a safer choice for consumers and businesses because it's backed by central banks, it's regulated, it's insured, it's the same currency as you use your normal currency, but it's got more features and more functions. So we'll see a whole bunch of products being developed out of programmable money, and the first will be commercially issued stablecoins or tokenized deposits, followed by central bank digital currencies.
All right, so it was nice to see GV on a mainstream platform. Let's face it, obviously Quant's one of those blue chips and so on, but like you, me, and a lot of other people, we're invested, of course, into some of these other ones from the ISOs, right? You see Brad Garlinghouse getting interviewed quite a bit on CNBC, some of these other, Fox Business platforms. Nice to be able to see Gilbert Verdin also in the limelight as well, right? So let's go ahead and talk about this whole thing in regards to stable coins, because it's really, really making not just crypto Twitter community driven news, right? It's a mainstream thing as well. So it's across the board. Let's go ahead and jump into this. So on my research, I came up with quite a bit for you guys today in regards to all this. So this originally was something that was posted in light of what? Basically FTX originally, right? And then of course, as we know, we went further from there, just kind of blowing it up a little bit more for you guys. So originally on December 21st, 2022, you have Toomey, who introduced legislation to guide future stablecoin regulation. The Stablecoin Trust Act, if you've been following this, basically, like it says right here, promoted competition and protected consumers. Basically, it was kind of like like Congress, Senate, and so on, trying to get something going here, introduced here, right? So, like you see right here, you have U.S. Senate Banking Committee member who is Pat Toomey, Republican from Pennsylvania, who introduced legislation that, of course, like it says, would establish the first federal regulatory framework for payment stablecoins and guide Congress towards a path for sensible regulation of cryptocurrencies, right? And I said numerous times on the live show that I felt as though, when you go from a period of having newly elected officials from last election, right? Midterms, last November, you have a lame duck session. They come on in, and then in reality, they might introduce things like, after, January 20th and so on. But in reality, if you've been following, politics and how some of the newly elected officials and some of the re-elected ones get legislation passed and whatnot, typically speaking, you don't see the ball really starting to get going until you get into March. So obviously we're into March. Look at this specific quote from back then, all right? This is a good outline. So it says, stablecoins are an exciting technological development that could transform money and payments. By digitizing the US dollar and making it available on a global, instant, and nearly cost-free basis, stablecoins could be widely used across the physical economy in a variety of ways, right? We know about some of this, but look at some of the key highlights. So again, in his particular quote, you have him state again, he hopes this framework lays the groundwork for my colleagues to pass legislation next year. Obviously, we're into that, right? Safeguarding consumer, or I should say customer funds without inhibiting innovation. And that's the key thing, right? It's not that we want to hinder the growth of blockchain technology. If anything, if we're going to follow the activity of the shady stuff that goes on, the Sam Bankman-Frieds of the world and so on. You don't want to make a hindrance on blockchain technology, and especially how it's evolving literally every day, right? But, like it says right here, there's skepticism about stablecoins. And, how do we get to the point where, people have more confidence in this, right? Not just people like retail people, but what are we really talking about here? We're talking about the institutional money. But institutional money, if you guys have been following this, is not going to come until you get basically this huge step that needs to get accomplished, which is regulatory clarity. So how do we get to that regulatory clarity, and why do I make a big deal about this particular outline? Well, look at this. The Stablecoin Trust Act recognizes the wide range of payments innovation occurring at the state level and avoids the regulatory conflict of interest that could emerge in the Federal Reserve, which may be authorized to issue a central bank digital currency, CBDC, were to have unchecked power over stablecoins. Now, like it says here, the key components is that this is going to encourage competition by authorizing several types of regulated entities to issue payment stablecoins, enhances financial stability by requiring that all payment stablecoins are fully backed by high quality liquid assets. Now, some people, of course, state, yeah, no kidding. This is where Ripple comes involved, right? The on-demand liquidity has to be backed by what? Precious metals, in this case, gold. Stellar's case, right? Silver and so on, right? When we go further into it, establishes transparency by subjecting all payment stablecoin issuers to standardized disclosure requirements, attestations by registered accounting firms. Again, a little bit more of the transparency that we're looking for, right? Provides much needed clarity that at minimum, stablecoins that do not offer interest are not securities, right? If anything, they realize it's a threat to TradeFi. We already get all that. So when we go further down on this particular outline, it says protects consumers by clarifying that payment stablecoin holders would have priority in the event of an issuer's insolvency. That's crucial, especially when realizing both recently what's happened with the banks, the traditional banks, where you have, for instance, Silvergate, you have, Silicon Valley, some of these other ones that's popped off recently and so on. Nothing can be insolvent. And if anything, institutional money will not come in if there's any doubts. That's the bottom line, right? Restores privacy protections to financial transactions involving stablecoins and other digital assets, preserves and builds upon the state-based regimes under which existing stablecoins are issued and regulated. And last but not least, authorizes the Office of the comptroller of the currency, the primary federal regulator of national banks, to establish a new federal license designed specifically for payment stablecoin issuers. Again, I apologize. Did some exercise before it came, and probably should have calmed down a little bit before I came on. But anyway, kind of a little bit winded from it still. All right, so of course, there's more background in regards to this. I will state this. So again, a follow-up in regards to December, because this was originally on this particular one you see here was in December of 2022. I know it says December 2021. That's a different thing I'm going to also refer to, which was a year before this original outline. So it says ranking member, again, Toomey, released a set of principles to lay the framework for forthcoming stablecoin legislation. Now, in regards to a little bit more in regards to this, right? So you have this also mentioned here. Now, it's not Toomey this time, but look what it mentions back in January. Now, it's this time you're into this year. So roughly, this is like the middle point of this particular outline. So stablecoin regulation, again, sources from CoinDesk. It says it's first on a new subcommittee's to-do list. And now you're also seeing how everything's getting fast-tracked. So I want you guys to have a broader perspective. You may have followed this in the past before, but again, guys, I think it's crucial to understand what is coming here soon and why it's so significant. So, Representative French Hill said that the Digital Asset Subcommittee plans to use the stablecoin draft as a model of how it will approach digital asset regulation moving forward. And when we get further into this, look at what is mentioned here, man. I mean, this is pretty amazing, to say the least, because you see how the change of tone is rapidly happening while you're seeing the fall of the traditional banking sector. And again, guys, if you're with me this far, you're really going to want to pay close attention to more of this particular outline. So look what it says here. It says stablecoin legislation will be the first top priority. Regards to this new subcommittee of the House, Financial Technology and Inclusion, right? Quote, first mover on Thursday. That's a starting point for the committee, but they also want to pursue a privacy stature federally, which they think is important to the digital future and part of the foundation of moving from an analog financial services environment to a more digital environment, right? Hill, the chairman of the subcommittee, also added, quote, we are going to do oversight hearings on both the regulators and some of the actions of last year so that we can learn from that. And of course, at was it the beginning of 2022, not the beginning of 2023, we saw Congress invite, top officials from various different blockchain projects, right? You even saw Charles Hoskinson have an interview. You saw, for instance, Denell Dixon was down there and so on. So at least they're trying to get the right people interviewed and have a broader perspective of understanding about it and so on. And let's face it, a lot of them, they don't get it, no matter what we do, no matter what we say. So it says one such action was the Ugly Baby Bill, a stablecoin bill, which worked out by, I know a lot of people are not a big fan of her, but Chairman Maxine Waters, a Democrat from California, and ranking Republican Patrick Kennedy of the House Financial Services Committee. Now listen to this. It says stablecoins which are backed by an asset such as the US dollar or gold appear to be the most straightforward. Well, as we know, the ones that are backed by gold, it's like, think about this whole talk about, for instance, again, Ripple's XRP, Stellar's XLM. I know this is a quant video, but I want people to understand that, we have to mention what's going on with that. We understand that when it comes to quant, it's fully interoperable with 100 plus blockchains. But I feel as though that they work in the background to get some of this done, but you cannot deny what's going on with some of them. So to me, I already made those connections. Some of you guys have it as well, but look what it says. Straightforward or low-hanging fruit tied to crypto. And how it's going to provide a model on how it will approach digital asset regulation. So who should regulate? Some of you guys have seen this in the past, but I love this specific quote right here. Hill said the goal of lawmakers on Capitol Hill is, of course, to work together. Well, no kidding, but listen to this, to pick the right direction that will help produce innovation that's beneficial to developers. Again, at least there's some people here, in Congress, I guess you could say, that recognize that it's not that we want to hinder the growth of blockchain innovation. If anything, we want to embrace it. Now you may be thinking, Max, you got to get to the point of this. I'm totally going to get to the point of this. Here is the main key point. As we went from the introduction, right, way back, then we saw, the big things that happened in response to FTX, right? But still, it's like, can we finally get to the finish line? I feel as though we're so close to the finish line, and here is why. So this was printed on the press, if you will, last night. This comes straight from, I believe it's BN Crypto. And look what it mentions here on the particular headline. House Financial Chair puts skids on stablecoin regulation after USDC depeg. A little bit more in regards to these two power players, right? Whether you're fans of them or not. Maxine Waters said that she and Representative Patrick Henry will prioritize new stablecoin legislation drafted last year. But the point is, you have Democrats, you do have Republicans. And it says the rush comes after, of course, USDC lost its dollar peg. We saw it wasn't just USDC, guys. We saw DAI depeg. We saw US double D from Tron depeg. We saw FEI USD. Also, another stablecoin, not as popular, but pegged to the dollar, depeg. Now, it says the new bill has bipartisan support. This is new stuff if you haven't seen this yesterday. So keep in line everything that's been mentioned, right? We got the Gilbert Verdian interview yesterday. Yesterday was the evening. Now you got some of this being printed off and so on. You understand that March 20th is literally right around the corner. Like, what is it, coming up on Monday? Right, so House Financial Services Committee Chairman Maxine Waters said that she would prioritize a new stablecoin bill after the recent banking collapse that saw Circle fall from its dollar peg. She also said that the passage of the stablecoin bill had been delayed by an expected change in the House majority to Republicans. Yeah, okay, but a lot of people feel as though like this is beyond that. Sometimes it just darn well seems like it's planned in some ways. I'm not trying to make conspiracy theories out of this, but man, when you look at all this, oh my gosh, it does seem like something really fishy has been going on. So it says stablecoins, of course, face fresh scrutiny after the collapse, but Maxine Waters affirmed supposedly that she and Senate Banking Committee Chairman Patrick McHenry would focus on a new stablecoin legislation supported by, of course, bipartisan support of the two major parties in Congress. The politician's comments come amid fresh scrutiny, guys, again, fresh scrutiny in regards to the stablecoin industry after the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. We covered that, of course. You guys have probably seen this long before now. SVB held a portion of reserves used to back Circle stablecoin. Stablecoins are usually kept at $1, but let's face it, I mean, in the future, after we get that regulatory clarity that we're all looking for, you're going to have, for instance, Ripple will be a steady form of digital asset, right? A steady store of value, right? Also Stellar, right? Some people look at, it's not just a 1-1 peg. Those are going to be some of the newer stablecoins. You got to keep in mind, if you're new to all this, that doesn't mean that, stable coins are just strictly 1-1 pegged to $1. So I get some of that in the comments every once in a while. People are like, oh, great. Well, I want to invest in XRP. It's only going to go to $1. Or, Stellar is only going to go to $1. I guess I'll just take my short-term gains. What do you do? That is not the case. Look more into it. Do more of your own research. But look what it mentions here. USDC, aka Circle, lost its peg to the dollar amid $1 billion in redemptions. We, of course, saw that right there. There's, of course, this whole thing in regards to a brief recap on the stablecoin draft bill. So, of course, it was originally introduced in September 2022. And of course, the midterms initially delayed its passage. But I want to point out this right here, all right? Here's one of the key things from all of this, right? So, lawmakers says regulations are not a silver bullet. Representative French Hill, chairman of the Banking Committee's Digital Assets Subcommittee, emphasized, guys, here's the key thing, emphasized importance of the draft legislation in keeping crypto companies in the U.S. So if you've been watching this whole time and listening, like, Max, could you get to it? There's the icing on the cake. March 15th, yesterday, right? Yesterday evening, bring it to you guys on the 16th, which is this morning. This is huge, guys, because all the talk that we've had, for instance, for a while about how, God, what's the U.S. going to do, especially with ISO 2022? Like, we're the last to show up to the big show. It was a big thing. Like, oh, God, obviously the U.S. is not going to come into the picture until November 2025. Everybody's on board, but the U.S. isn't. Shout out to one of CTN's sideline reporters, was very active member of a community, Mr. Michael Cornwell. He's been saying this since last summer of 2022. He felt as though that the U.S. is simply working in the background. If that's the case, I think this statement kind of solidifies it, right? I should say kind of, it definitely does. Let's get a little bit more into this before we wrap this up. So it says straight from French Hill, and he posts this on Twitter. He says, today I led the inaugural Financial Committee hearing of the new subcommittee on digital assets, financial technology, and inclusion. My full opening remarks are below, which of course says U.S. Congressman French Hill, serving the 2nd District of Arkansas. And of course, it's big. Look what it also says, right? By not developing that framework where everybody knows the rules of the road and we can encourage digital asset innovation, we're going to disable that market here and it's going to move offshore. The law market told a fortune. Yeah, no kidding. Everybody felt that way. Even Ripple feels that way. A lot of us, of course, feel as though that Ripple's going to win in that lawsuit against the SEC. But the key thing is we don't want blockchain innovation to lead the United States of America. My God, whatever happened to the great days where the U.S. was the first in everything? I miss those days. I wasn't even, well, I should say I miss those days. I wasn't born for it, but I read it in history books. I'm so proud as an American to hear that. So are you guys. I know a lot of you guys are watching. You're from other different countries and so on. But you do like the idea that you see Congress recognizing that they cannot make that mistake. That in itself, guys, is incredibly bullish. So, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this particular video, and I want, if anything, to know what you guys think in regards to this. I think they are rapidly getting this going on, and you see that. They're going from one phase of just talking about it, as the saying goes, put up or shut up, right? Walk the talk instead of just talking the talk. And that's the way I personally look at it. I think there's a lot going on. This whole date of the 20th is big. And I don't think it's just a date in which nothing's going to happen. As far as the utility being used, I think it'll be soon after that. This whole talk about nothing's going to happen with some of these ones from ISO 222, whether it's Quant. Obviously, that's just in the mix of ISO 222. I get it. It's ISO TC 307. But again, guys, think about what works in the background. Quant gets the job done because they make all this fully interoperable. At the same time, we still have to recognize other projects that are part of the mix. Ripple, XRP, Stellar, XLM, some of these other ones, right? Heck, why don't we throw Cypherium in the mix, right? With FedNow, they're part of ISO 222. So a lot of key things are at stake. But man, when we get that regulatory clarity, right? Like I mentioned, watch out for that particular video. I should say that particular video. It's already been released. They got a lot of views. Check it out for yourself. I know it's a deep dive. I'll point to it again. You'll see it up here in one of the cards. You're going to want to look at that particular video. You can fast forward if you want. But the reason why you want to take a look at that particular video, it gives you an outline of what is coming here soon, right? So if we get that regulatory clarity, institutional money comes in because they feel like it's a sure bet. And oh my God, for all the people that flooded saying that 2023, there's not much money to be made, I don't think that's the case at all. So like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again for watching today's video on Quant. And let's face it, a little bit of comments for some of the other ones. And y'all have a blessed day, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.